and to give you some point of difference and be memorable. But it has to serve the business. So reputation is about understanding how do you want to be positioned and how do you want to be described as an employer in the first place. This is a very basic place to start, but most organizations, believe it or not, don't actually pay much attention to this. They either they do the research and go with the sum of what people say they are, which is fraught with danger. So we could sort of dive into that if you like. Or they just set out to be really intangibly the best or the most attractive. So we believe defining a tangible reputation is point number one. The second layer of strategy is the employee value proposition. So that's laying out a two-way value exchange of what the organization needs to move forward, overlaid with what people want to find a sense of purpose, impact, and belonging in their job. And then the third and final layer of employer brand strategy is the talent experience. So where are those branded experiences going to show up? Either the candidate experience, the employee experience, or the alumni experience, to bring authenticity and prove out the proposition that you're claiming, and then live up to the reputation that you're shooting for. So reputation, expectation, and experience are the three broad layers of employer brand strategy.
Okay, so let's pretend I'm gonna start a business. I got HR skills, so I'm gonna be a great employee. I know employer brand is important, and I'm just gonna make up something. But maybe I'm a terrible boss. How do I match reality with how I want to be perceived?
Well, that's a really good question. So when we do the research, and everything needs to be steeped in research, and on top of evidence-based research, we can then build a strategy that is both authentic and fit for purpose. And there's three buckets of research that we need to understand. The leadership view. So what's the direction of travel that the organization is wanting to go in, set by the leaders? And what do they recognize as existing strengths and aspects of culture, values, and principles that they believe are really important and valuable to drive forward? And then the employee view, which is really interesting because that's a snapshot of reality today. And a lot of the time that gives you a very transparent glimpse into the good, the bad, the ugly, as well as the strengths, benefits, and opportunities to be had. So, you ask questions like, why did you join? Why do you stay? How do you find a sense of purpose, impact, and belonging? And my favorite question, actually, Andrea, is, if it was your job to dissuade somebody from joining this organization, what would you say? Because then they give you the warts and all harsh realities, the adversities, the challenges, the sacrifices, and the commitments that you have to be ready for, which gives you the really good stuff. This is the stuff that candidates want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stuff that employees need to be prepared to overcome if they're going to thrive. And of course, if you have that information, you can then delve deeper into, oh, wow, that sounds tough, that sounds hard, that sounds difficult.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate that? And why do you navigate that? And typically you'll then get both sides of a very important give and get equation that tells you what it's really like and why people endure that stuff in terms of the source of pride and passion of achievement and growth and fulfillment and all of that good stuff. So typically those are the most important two views to get authenticity and transparency about your employee experience. And then the third and final one is the market view, so you can get an idea of who the competition is, what you're against, what level of hygiene that you need to at least meet, where your natural strengths can set you apart, how to be more relevant, and how to win, how to win an unfair share of the best talent in the marketplace.
Do you have any examples you can point to?
There's millions of examples out there. And, if you search social media and you see any organization who are advertising for jobs and roles and talking about what they're like as an employer, you'll get an idea of what the culture's like and that kind of thing. We've worked with global brands like Apple and Nike and Glassdoor and Workday and, many organizations, and they're all unique and different. Amazon is a good example to talk about. We've worked with our Amazon games a little bit, but from the outside looking in, Amazon has a reputation for being quite a tough environment.
Uh-huh.
So they're not warm and fuzzy. They're not saying, come and work for us and everybody will, be your best friend and it's going to feel great at every moment. But what they are saying is, if you can thrive in our tough environment, you're going to be the best version of yourself and significantly more employable in 2 years' time. So they know who they are.
Uh-huh.
They embrace the harsh realities and challenges and issues. They make them work for them. And because of that, they attract and compel a certain type of person. Think of the efficiencies of that, Andrea, just by knowing what your proposition is through the recruitment process. So I guess that's a good example. And then, you can look at a company like HubSpot, which trades on its culture. It's a tech company, synonymous with making profits and all that good stuff. But actually, they look like a really fun place to work. They're highly inclusive and they're very empathetic and compassionate when it comes to their people. So they've got a reputation for culture. And then the sort of third different type of reputation as an employer is the likes of Patagonia or Ben and Jerry's. They very clearly set out a proposition where they want to leave the world better than they found it. So they trade on citizenship. And if you're the type of person who wants to feel good about the contribution you make into the world, not just the salary at the end of the month and so on and so forth, then that might be a place you go. And the key here is you need to know who you are as an organization, what's going to serve the organization best in terms of driving your mission forward, and then craft a compelling proposition that is in service to that a certain type of person will be compelled towards. And do you know, Andrea, what I've just said there is the same for a small startup as it is for a global giant.
So you have alluded to this already, but let's do it directly. How do you use brand in talent acquisition?
That's a great question. So in talent acquisition, usually you're under pressure and stress to find a certain number of bodies quickly because the cost of a vacant seat is significant. You're looking at the time to hire, the cost to hire, the quality of hire. So the theory goes, and this has been proven out so many times, the business case is clear, that if you have a confident and compelling and a crystal clear proposition, then you can use that to drive more brand awareness in the marketplace. So you might build that to talent pool and get the attention of the best talent in the world. And then if you can engage a talent audience such that they lean in, you got their interest, they want what you're selling, and let's face it, every TA leader is selling something. That you're going to improve all of those metrics, improve the reputation as an employer, improve the caliber of hire, and foster and nurture capability culture that's serving the organization really well. Instead of just being attractive, maybe hiring people quickly, but their expectations are such that, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for, and then they leave, or worse, they stick around, and you've got all of these ghosts and ghouls walking the court, and they're sort of quiet,
right?
Doing all the quiet things that we've.
Yeah. What does make the workplace?
This all comes down to the business case of being highly efficient and highly effective. One of the byproducts is you've got our vision, and it was at PH Creative that I just sort of handed the reins over, and it still is at HappyDance, that everybody loves their job. That's our vision. So if we can help organizations better articulate who they are as an employer, and then deliver a world-class candidate experience to live up to that proposition, that people can make better informed career decisions and businesses can benefit from better matched, highly caliber calibrated talent as well. So that's our mission. That's our goal.
What are some common mistakes you see employers making in developing their employer brand?
So the big one is like the common misconception is you try and put your best foot forward and look as attractive as you possibly can. And it looks nice and shiny and happy and positive and all of this good stuff. And you brush over the harsh realities and adversities such that it looks amazing and you're setting yourself up for a fall. You might actually get deluged with applicants because the job looks so attractive and all the rest of it. That creates chaos for the recruiters who couldn't possibly get back to all those applicants. It doesn't set the expectations properly. So high caliber candidates who've got a lot of skills just might not be a good match for the culture. And if that happens, they'll join and leave. We've seen that happen many, many times. That's probably the biggest mistake. The second is not being tangible with understanding how to align with the business. And this breaks my heart, Andre. I see it all the time. And you've probably seen it as well, where organizations are thriving, but then they hit a bump in the road. The organization gets rid of 14,001 jobs, and the employer brand leader is one of them. Now, that's the most important time for the employer brand leader to be at the forefront in the control room, getting all the value out of the employer brand, and that's not the case. And the challenge is the business case and the personal brand of employer brand leaders isn't where it needs to be. Still, as a HR initiative, and actually it's a primary business strategy initiative. The employer brand and your reputation as an employer is essential to business success today, especially now we've got AI that's literally just made innovation and technology essentially like oil and gas and electricity and water. It's a utility now. People are even more important to businesses to differentiate and win.
So I'm a consultant to small business, and they're doing everything on such a tight budget. Can you develop an employer brand without a whole lot of money?
The more budget you have, the easier it is to land the message, the easier it is to spread that message far and wide, sometimes even when the message isn't as compelling as perhaps it could be. But any organization, a one-person organization, can have an amazing employer brand when they're looking to hire their first person. It's got nothing to do with budget whatsoever. Actually, it's about understanding the direction of travel and how to motivate, inspire, align, and bring along the people you need to fulfill that. And what the business needs and what people want don't have to be in tension with each other. And the best organizations, large and small, understand that and make sure everything's pulling in the same direction. So to be honest, Andrea, it's why I wrote Give and Get Employer Branding. Instead of keeping that as a secret sauce, we wrote it down and gave away every inch of the blueprint so we could get closer to our vision of everybody loves the job. Like we want people to embrace the give and get philosophy. And in the book, we outline exactly how to do that. And it's got nothing to do with budget. It's literally everything to do with strategy. And, I want to be clear here. It's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Okay.
To find a way to differentiate yourself with authenticity, to resonate with more relevance to your talent audience than anybody else, and to be memorable for the right reasons, it's not easy. When you get the answer is usually quite simple. But it really does take you understanding the DNA of your organization, being really honest about what it truly will take to move forward, and having the conviction to create a proposition which is fair and compelling on both sides. It's the David and Goliath. Find your strengths, not try and engineer or compete against large organizations and their strengths, and that's the strategy.
How much of this is marketing and, making it look pretty, making it, cohesive, at least like in written form and all of that? How much of it is that?
Yeah. So It's kind of like, the iceberg analogy where most of it is below the water. You need to get your house in order. And this is about coherence and clarity and everything aligning. So you're all of messaging and positioning and understanding the themes of your employer brand and the proposition. Once you have that level of clarity, and that framework is all laid out in the book, by the way, then the messaging is the sort of icing on the cake. That is like when you have the clarity of what you're trying to articulate, articulating it becomes so much easier. And then if you plan a talent attraction campaign every couple of months and the campaign changes, but you want the brand consistency, if you've got the playbook, it's so much easier. So much easier to offer brand consistency and so much easier to make sure things are on theme and it makes sense and it's authentic and so on and so forth. So, in answer to your question, if you get the foundation right, it means you can run fast and then create the beautiful artwork and all the rest of it. But in my experience, if the artwork isn't the most beautiful and it's not the best designer in the world and you didn't choose the right typography and the color combinations could be a bit better, but the message is intriguing and it's compelling and people lean in and say, I want to know a little bit more about that, then you're winning. It's much better than the shiny thing that looks the same as all of the competitors.
How should the employer brand fit strategically? Like either be fitting with the business strategy or the mission, vision, values? I think the pitch around the mission, vision, values is clear, but business strategy.
Yeah. So if you spend enough time with the leaders of an organization, and then you can do some research internally and fill in some gaps such that you really understand the business strategy so it's tangible. And then the next layer from that is, okay, what are the organization's capabilities required to deliver the business strategy? Capability isn't just culture and skills, it's technology, it's like infrastructure and environment. But if you understand all of those things, then you can start to look at, okay, so in terms of character traits and the capability of people and groups of people, what do we need to add up to deliver on the business strategy and what's required? And, usually you can find this out very easily by asking all the different business division leaders, hey, what are the biggest problems on your desk? What are the biggest challenges? They've done a gap analysis. They've got headaches left, right, and center. And usually every single one of those problems has got a people derivative. Either they haven't got enough of these people or these people haven't got enough of these skills or, so on and so forth. So you can easily put together a map of, if this is where the business is going, this is the requirement to get there. These are the full capabilities. Okay, this is what we need from our culture, our people, and our teams collectively. Okay, so what are the themes that we've just found running through that? And now, how do we craft a compelling and authentic proposition to make sure that we dissuade people who aren't a good match? We compel those people who will be attracted by this type of challenge that we have universally. And that's where we start. Ultimately, it's about reverse engineering. What does the business need? You get into, okay, now we understand that. How do we tell a story and talk about the strengths, benefits, and opportunities balanced with the harsh realities and adversities to craft a proposition that's both authentic and compelling?
A final question here, the way I usually wrap it up. If someone wants to learn more, learn to do this, what do you suggest?
Well, of course, start by reading Give and Get Employer Branding, which is available in all good bookshops and Amazon.com. I think it's still number one in employer branding and employer brand strategy. So start there. Contact me on LinkedIn. We have a sprint course, online course that you can sign up for. I think it's on the happydance.love website somewhere. But if you want to join the shortlist, or the wait list, or you want to do that, contact me on LinkedIn. And I think beyond that, there's a newsletter you can sign up for, the Digital Hub, which I still write for. That's at ph-creative.com. And actually there's some amazing employer brand communities on Facebook and LinkedIn that I'd encourage people to just jump in and get involved in. The employer brand community is small, intimate, connected, generous, and full of lovely people. So I think wherever you start, you're going to find really helpful people who can share their experiences.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Bryan. I appreciate all that insight. And I especially appreciate that this can be done on a budget, because what we're really driving for is authenticity and genuinely reflecting what's actually happening in the organization. And you don't need money for that. Anyway, we have reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening out there. We'll catch you next time when I talk with another insightful guest.